What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to be looking at the Open Great League, and the team that we're going to be taking a look at today includes WORMADAM Trash. Now, WORMADAM Trash got a double buff this season. It has access to both Bug Bite, which got buffed to a Dragon Breath clone, as well as Metal Sound, which got buffed to either a Quick Attack or Powder Snow clone. And with Stab, actually becomes a Shadow Claw clone. So this thing has really great fast moves, and which has previously held it back. And because its charge moves are so expensive, I thought, oh, that makes sense. It should use Metal Sound because Metal Sound generates energy quicker. But the recommended moveset is Bug Bite. So what we're going to be taking a look at today is actually Metal Sound WORMADAM Trash against the Open Great League, covering its fire weakness with 2 water Pokemon in the back. And before we hop into those battles, a quick thank you to the legend trainer members on this channel, Big Burden and Andrew Pitten 2201. Huge shout out to those guys. Without further ado, let's hop into some battles. Okay, into the first match, we actually have mirror leads. WORMADAM Trash into WORMADAM Trash, but you'll notice my opponent is running the recommended moveset of Bug Bite. So they're going to be doing more fast move pressure, but they're going to be a lot slower to these charge moves. I am able to outpace, make it to the Bug Buzz, and now my opponent is going to connect with a Bug Buzz of their own. Everything is resisted here, but Bug Buzz is a better move, and they get the defense fall, and I do not. So suddenly, this matchup is looking a lot trickier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect with the second Bug Buzz, and then safe switch into my Feraligatr. My opponent has great counting. They throw right before I make it to a Hydro Cannon, and they're going to connect with a Bug Buzz of their own, and then come in with a Shadow Feraligatr of their own. What are the chances that we are running the exact same team? That would be pretty incredible. So here comes back-to-back Hydros. My opponent wins CMP, so I'm forced to just let this go. And then I imagine I'm just going to come in with a Tentacruel and get a nice head start on energy. I'm able to get the perfect acid farm down without even taking any Hydro Cannon damage. Where does my opponent go from here? They have Samurott in the back. So I do not have a neutral hard-hitting fast move here. Neutral hard-hitting charge move here, but I do have Acid Spray, and that's going to lower my opponent's defense, and now this Scald will be enough to pick up the knockout, so my opponent has to respect that with a shield. Of course, they are completely walled here. Hydro Cannon and Mega Horn, all resisted. I will let it go. It is the Mega Horn. That does big damage. Can I get the farm down? No, but the opponent makes a nice catch of the Acid Spray onto their WORMADAM Trash. After a little bit of lag, this will be able to connect. Can we get the full farm down? It looks like yes. Is my opponent able to make it to a charge move on the Samurott? They are. And at this point, I'm going to shield this up because I need just one more acid's worth of damage on that Samurott. Unable to get to the Acid Spray, but I think that puts it in Metal Sound range. Can we get the farm down? We can, and just barely we're able to take the win in that mirror lead. Into the next match, terrible lead. We've got a Talonflame on the lead, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw one Metal Sound, switch into my Feraligatr, and defer the damage of the Incinerate onto my Feraligatr. I am responded with my opponent responds with a Vigoroth, and Vigoroth will not be able to pick up the knockout with a Body Slam here. Body Slam was nerfed a couple seasons back, and now it does not pick up the knockout from that range, which allows me to get to 2 Hydro Cannons. My opponent has to give up a shield in order to maintain switch. I'm now going to come back in with WORMADAM because I don't really care about WORMADAM health. This also forces my opponent to go for a Rock Slide in order to hit for neutral damage, and that's exactly what they're going to do, but WORMADAM Trash is very bulky. Can I get the full Metal Sound farm down? The answer is no. My opponent is going to make one final move. Is it the Body Slam? Is it the Rock Slide? It is the Body Slam. Once that Metal Sound goes through, I know I can just pivot into my Tentacruel, and now I just have to see what is in the back. I will respect a Brave Bird here. It is the Brave Bird, and in the back, my opponent has a Swampert. So I'm a little bit on the back foot here, being triple hard countered in this matchup. But Tentacruel, I know, walls the moveset on Swampert this season if they're running Hydro Cannon and Sludge. So I can actually live a charge move. Now I can go for another Scald, outpacing the Swampert just barely. Just because of the new pacing of Acid this season. They actually let that go, potentially going for a full farm down with the Talonflame. So I end up sniping, going for a CMP sack swap. I'm unsuccessful, but I can actually make it to 2 Iron Heads back to back here, which actually grabs a shield for my opponent, and I'm 2 acids away from a Scald, so able to grab that final shield and connect with a Scald on the Talonflame, and somehow triple hard countered in that game. We are able to take the win. Fantastic lead in the next match. We have a Sceptile on our screen. Sceptile, of course, did get buffed with Fury Cutter this season, but it's still a pretty garbage Pokemon. Frenzy Plant is resisted here, and so is Breaking Swipe. They're going to connect with a Breaking Swipe before pivoting into a Sableye, and Sableye is going to take massive damage from that Bug Buzz, so I will just let that go, or they will just let that go. That connects, does huge damage, and now in comes the Feraligatr. I can take any one charge move, and now we have energy on the Feraligatr to potentially make it to an Ice Beam here. I end up not even farming up to the Ice Beam because I know a Hydro Cannon will do massive damage, and I was already getting pretty low. And where do I go from here? Do I just come back in with the Wormadam? I think I do. Everything is resisted. Are they going to throw their energy? They are. That's honestly kind of surprising, not banking this energy for later. It is another Breaking Swipe that is resisted. In comes a Blastoise, and now Blastoise is going to be met with a debuffed Bug Buzz, but that's okay because this will do some sizable chip. I'm now going to go for a Hydro Cannon catch on my Tentacruel. I'm unsuccessful, but this is where it forces my opponent to go for a Skull Bash to do any meaningful damage. They do end up going for the Skull Bash, and we get that shield call right. And even though they raised their defense, I can now lower it by 2 stages back. And my opponent ends up committing a shield, which is huge because now these acids are doing massive damage. They look like poison jabs. I can shield up this second Skull Bash, and at this point this game is over. Back in comes a Sceptile, immediately met with an Acid Spray. This is super effective damage, and that actually does massive damage. That is ridiculous. Sceptile is immensely glassy. My opponent sees the writing on the wall. They resign the match, and we are able to take that win. We see another Talonflame on the lead. This is a terrible lead. One Metal Sound, pivot into our Feraligatr, and in comes Credilli. But this Credilli is actually on Bullet Seed. So, of course, Bullet Seed hitting for super effective damage, whereas Acid would only be neutral here. It also increases their, or improves their pacing to their first charge move. But I am able to shield that up after grabbing a shield from my opponent. At this point, I think I can go straight Ice Beam and still outpace to the charge moves and potentially pick up a knockout here. My opponent does respect it with an Ice Beam, or with a shield, and I think at this point I'm just going to let this go. I know Wormadam Trash will double resist Grass Knot, so force them to go for Rock Tomb here, which is a neutral damage, but Metal Sound is super effective, so I can potentially get a full farm down in this matchup. And that's exactly what I'm going to play to, I believe, anyways. I don't remember. But here comes another Rock Tomb from my opponent, which honestly might force my hand to shield. And it looks like that was actually a CMP tie, which is a little bit strange. I'm now going to go for an Undercharge. That does very little damage and actually makes my opponent pivot into their Talonflame, which is fantastic because now I have the alignment that I need. In comes a Fly. I can overfarm slightly here, pick up the knockout with the Scald. Scald from this range will be enough to pick up the knockout, and it does. Are they going to come back in with their Credilli? No, they're going to come in with a Furret instead. Furret going to instantly go for a Swift. Swift will do some decent chip, but it is not enough to pick up the knockout, and Scald will do massive damage to the Furret, especially from the shadow. That does huge chip. In comes the Wormadam Trash. We actually bait back out the Credilli. We get the full farm down, come out with a move loaded, and my opponent is just going to resign the match. Neutral lead in the next match, except worse by the fact that we're actually running Metal Sound. This is a matchup where Bug Bite would be better because it would be neutral as opposed to resisted. Of course, Steel is resisted by the electric typing of Stunfisk. So in comes a Bug Buzz. Bug Buzz will still do pretty sizable damage to this Stunfisk, not quite enough to two-shot it looks like, unless you get the defense fall, and I don't think we did. But here comes a Mud Bomb, and unfortunately they're going to be able to outpace, I believe. No, actually we are able to outpace by one singular turn, able to make it to the Bug Buzz. My opponent actually commits a shield, and it's a CMP tie, which explains the pacing there. Mud Bomb does pick up the knockout. In comes the Feraligatr. Did we get one turn lag there? It looks like we did. That is very unfortunate. My opponent still would have been able to outpace by one turn, or by 2 turns, which is fine. But now I can overfarm here, go for the Hydro Cannon on a potential CMP tie with the next discharge, and now my opponent has gained a shield advantage, and they're actually not going to just take that. So maybe weak to Feraligatr in the back is all that I can think about, which would be strange with a Stunfisk lead having no answers to Feraligatr. I imagine there's a Glisspot in the back because Glisspot makes a great core with Stunfisk. and they end up coming in with a Moltres. So already ABA weak to ice. I'm able to make it to the ice beam. This will hit for massive super effective damage onto the Moltres. It leaves them at 1 HP. We're able to snipe with an acid. What's in the back? It is a Golisopod. So we got the team read right. They're completely walled here, so they will just resign the match. Into the next match, picking up a neutral lead, another matchup made worse by Metal Sound. I guess I'm not making like a good, what's it called, reason to run Metal Sound here. Whereas Bug Bite would be neutral in this matchup. Of course, Metal Sound resisted by the water typing of Gastrodon in this matchup. They are, for some reason, only going for resisted body slams as opposed to neutral earth powers, which is a little bit strange. But I'm able to go for the Bug Buzz into a, I guess I probably could have gone just straight Iron Head here, but double Bug Buzz, increased pacing on Wormadam, able to take the zeros. In comes a Talonflame, so I'm going to throw one Metal Sound and then pivot into my Feraligatr. I end up throwing on a potential CMP tie, and my opponent punishes me by going for the extra Incinerate, which means they will be able to outpace me here, which means I kind of just have to let this go. They're at the back-to-back moves. There's nothing I can do. Fly does pick up the knockout, and now we have 2 shields and a Tentacruel, and Wormadam Trash as a potential catch option in the end game. They're going to go for 2 more Incinerates, which means they're once again at the back-to-back flies. I can shield 1, and the question is, do I go for the catch? No. I'm just going to double shield in this matchup and then go for the full potential farm down. Can I get the full farm down is the question, and the answer is no. So what I want to do is make a catch onto my Wormadam Trash. That is absolutely huge. Fly connects, able to bank loads of energy on the Tentacruel, and it's a Typhlosion in the back. I only throw 1 acid and the move because it looked like I got 1 turn lag there. My opponent does shield that, but I'm at the back-to-back charge moves. So here comes another Scald coming their way. Scald from full HP picks up the knockout on the non-shadow Typhlosion. 1 more acid to KO the Talonflame, and we are able to take that win. Battle of the Bug Steels. In the next match, we've got Metal Sound Wormadam Trash against Bug Bite Forretress. Of course, Bug Bite Forretress going to be doing a lot more damage with their fast move, and all of their charge moves are neutral here as opposed to mine, which are all resisted. So this looks to be like a very dominant matchup for Forretress. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pivot and reset that debuff, going for the Hydro Cannon as soon as I get to it, right before my opponent is able to make it to a second Rock Tomb. And we actually will grab a shield on the CMP tie with my opponent's Rock Tomb. I know I can live this, so I will let this go. That still does some pretty sizable damage. Can I get to another Hydro? The answer is no. Now the question is, where do I go from here? I can't acid farm down because that is double resisted, so I'm forced to come back in with the Wormadam Trash. I'm now going to go for an Iron Head right away, and this Fortress has already put a large dent in this team, but we have grabbed a shield advantage. In comes a Clay Doll, and I'm just going to stay in this matchup because if they try to go for a full farm down, I can actually make it to a Bug Buzz, and Bug Buzz is super effective damage. That land, that does massive damage, and now in comes the Tentacruel. They're of course just going to go for a Rock Tomb here because this is my final Pokemon. They can permanently debuff me with the Rock Tomb. The question is, can I get the full acid farm down? The answer is yes. What is in the back? It is a Dedenne. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to overfarm. Now I'm going to go for the acid spray, hoping my opponent thinks I'm on Sludge Wave due to the acid fast move, but they actually shield a acid spray instead. That allows me to lower their defense. So even though they raise their defense back by 1 stage and my attack is lowered, Scald is still able to pick up the knockout, and we are able to take that win. Into the next match, picking up a decent lead, Wormadam Trash into Jumpluff. Jumpluff, of course, walled here in the fact that they have Fairy Wind, and if they are running Energy Ball, but my opponent shows right away that they are running Aerial Ace, and probably Aerial Ace Energy Ball, because they would have just gone over the Acrobatics, which is neutral, because that is super effective on Bug, whereas it is resisted on Steel, making it net neutral. They are able to make it to the second Aerial Ace, but we are pretty much at the same health range, and I'm able to make it to another Bug Buzz on the CMP tie with their next Aerial Ace, which probably will be able to pick up the knockout. No, not quite. puts them very, very low, but I know I can live another Aerial Ace here, so I will let this go. And WORMADAM Trash is going to win the zeros, but I'm instead going to get an energy lead onto my Feraligatr, which proves to be a good decision when they come in with their Primeape. Primeape, of course, going to be met with a Hydro Cannon, but I still have a good matchup with Tentacruel in the back. However, I could still outpace here, but I am going to let this go. It is just the Rage Fist, and that allows me to outpace to the next charge move. So here comes another Hydro Cannon, and now my opponent is in a difficult situation. They either have to go down 2 shields or let their Primeape get KO'd while also going down a shield. But now down goes the Feraligatr with a Rage Fist. In comes the Tentacruel. They're walled here with close combat, but I know a Rage Fist double boosted is still going to do a lot of damage. They end up full sending the close combat, and in comes Carbink. Now Carbink, of course, as a Rock Throw user, it does hit neutral damage here, but it looks like 2 Scalds are going to be enough to KO. So I'm just going to go for the back-to-back Scalds here. Hopefully I don't have to give my opponent a shield back, and if I don't, that's going to be huge. Down goes the Carbink. I'm able to get the full acid farm down of the Primeape, and we are able to take that win. Pangoro on the lead in the next match. This is a matchup that would probably be better if we were running Bug Bite, because Bug Bite would just be doing more damage in this matchup. But Metal Sound, of course, does improve our pacing, and we probably only have to go for an Iron Head here in this matchup, because Pangoro is extremely glassy. So here comes the first Iron Head. My opponent will respect that. Because I did call the bait on the first Night Slash, I'm now going to let the second one go. Another Night Slash will not be enough to KO, and if they do go for the Night Slash, here comes another Iron Head, able to outpace to their third Night Slash, which is huge. I'm able to connect with that. I'm going to come in with a Tentacruel because I do not want them to go for a close combat, and in comes a Claydol. I'm now going to go for the Scald. This will hit for massive super effective damage. And my opponent has no shields remaining in play, so there's nothing they can do about that. And at this point, I'm just going to let this go. Rock Tomb, not able to connect there, and I actually choose to not throw my energy. And the reason is because I want an energy lead on my Feraligatr. Feraligatr with an energy lead and a 2 shield advantage looks to be extremely deadly in the endgame, but my opponent has loads of energy on their Pangoro. They're at the back-to-back moves, so I'm going to end up catching the second charge move onto my WORMADAM Trash. It is another close combat. Now their defense is super lowered. As soon as I get that catch, my opponent knows they no longer have a win con, so they resign the match. Until the final match of the video, we have another lead where it would be nice to have Bug Bite instead of Metal Sound, but of course our pacing would be a lot worse. So I know I can live one Hydro Cannon here. That is about 50% from the Shadow Blastoise, which is honestly pretty good. I mean, WORMADAM Trash does have some really solid bulk to it. Here comes a Bug Buzz. My opponent lets that go. That does massive damage. They're now in the red. And at this point, I can just let this go. But Hydro Cannon will be able to pick up the knockout. And now in comes the Tentacruel. I know I can get a nice energy lead here. And Tentacruel is rather flexible. So what is their Pokemon in the back? It is a Dragalge. And perhaps I should have gotten an energy lead on the Feraligatr. I am just going to go for a Scald right away. My opponent lets that go, of course, because it is resisted. But we get the attack drop. And my opponent has to full send an Outrage here to do any meaningful damage. They are exactly going to do that. They're going to go for the Outrage. And now I'm going to go for a Scald before they make it to their next Outrage. However, my opponent just settles for an Aqua Tail. That is resisted damage, so I will definitely just let that go. Here comes the Scald. This probably will be able to pick up the knockout, and it does. And what is in the back? It is a Fury Cutter Gligar. I'm going to go for the Scald on the Sampitai with an Aerial Ace here. Aerial Ace from the non-Shadow Feraligatr, unable to pick up the knockout from that range, even against a Shadow Tentacruel. The good IVs come in clutch. We're able to grab that shield from my opponent, and in comes the Feraligatr. And because we got 0-turn switch, we will always be able to outpace in this matchup because we have the exact same pacing, unless of course they have Night Slash. I know I can live one charge move, but I will shield this up. Here comes the Aerial Ace, but now here comes the Hydro Cannon on the Sampitai with their next Aerial Ace, and Hydro Cannon is massive overkill. It'll KO the Gligar, and we are able to take that win. Yeah, that is WORMADAM Trash with Metal Sound in the Open Great League. I honestly didn't make a great case for it running Metal Sound because there were a lot of matchups where Bug Bite would have been neutral, whereas Metal Sound would have been resisted. But as this meta evolves, I think Metal Sound might be the way to go, especially in certain limited cups. When you think about everything that's around, especially with things like Credilli being everywhere, I think Metal Sound has a lot of play. and you're not going to see as many of the Pokemon that I see in these matchups. You are still going to see your fires, but a lot of the neutral matchups you'll see with this Pokemon, and then you just have to kind of cover its weaknesses in the back. I decided double water. I wanted to try out Acid Tentacruel because I hadn't yet. Acid Tentacruel does seem to be quite a big threat, and I think it's underranked currently, but it's kind of awkward with its moveset. Like, you either want to run Poison Sting with double nuke, if you consider Scald a nuke, or I guess you probably could with the Shadow, or you could run Acid for that extra fast move damage with Acid Spray. It's a little bit awkward of a Pokemon, but of course, Shadow for Alligator's not going anywhere. But yeah, that's going to be it for me from this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, peace.